a good sort of battle plan. How do we put that into practice right here in this suburb here? A few weeks ago, I read about President Putin. Of course, he's in the news every night. And he was given to understand by his intelligence chiefs that it'll be a walk in the park to go in there to Ukraine, knock them off. It'll be a bit of fruit. Victory would be quickly achieved. But he's now dismayed. That's proved to be far from the truth. So what did he do? He arrested the FSB chief intelligence, that's the KGB equivalent, FSB today. He arrested the intelligence chiefs, Sergei Beseda and Anatoly Bolyukh, and they have disappeared into the Russian prison system. They may never be seen again because he blamed them for the faulty intelligence. Fair enough. They gave the wrong advice. Well, effective battle plans in any military organization, it starts with the gathering of good on-the-ground intelligence, which is analyzed and examined, and then that is passed down through the ranks right to the troops. They will be briefed on everything that they can expect as they step out from their defensive positions. And religiously preparing for spiritual encounters and skirmishes and battles, it ought to be a part of our preparation as well. And we call this spiritual mapping. Now, I know that the term spiritual mapping doesn't appear in the Bible anywhere, but it's something I've used both in Asia and in Melbourne, and it's a contemporary term. I'm not worried by the fact that it doesn't appear in the Bible, because we actually today use many terms and methodologies which are not mentioned in the Bible anywhere. Things like all of our technology of radio, television, computers, automobiles, Sunday school, the title Reverend or Senior Pastor. None of these things are mentioned in the Bible, but they're useful and we use them today. And so with this concept of spiritual mapping, it involves observation, interpretation, revelation to develop an overlay of what is in front of us, developing a map of a given area and what will need to be specifically addressed in prayer, obstacles to be overcome. If you look at Acts chapter 17, verses 16 to 34, Paul arrives in Athens. And I would imagine he did a preliminary investigation of the territory, because what he uncovered was sources of opposition to his message. There were the idols, the synagogue, marketplace, where the Epicurean philosophers had their disputations in the Areopagus, the clash of ideas, objects of worship. There was one there to an unknown God. And so much of this data that he gathered became the content of his very first message and guided his prayer for the place. Now, admittedly, there was a pretty meager response to that first message, but that's okay. It was the start of the warfare for Athens, as we read in Acts 17, verse 34. If I bring that forward into the 20th and 21st century, something that you could understand a little more clearly, in the United States, in the state of Oregon, which is a beautiful state of lovely mountains, forests, lush dairy land, beaches, mountains, just 2,880 square kilometers in the area known as Tillamook. That's a county in the state of Oregon. And when you look at Tillamook, it is a beautiful, lovely, quiet, peaceful, prosperous, serene place. Until you start to look under the surface. And then what do you find? Severe alcohol, drug abuse, New Age practices, Wicca, that's witchcraft, alternative lifestyle, other movements. And these things have all come together. It's a pretty negative influence over the affairs of the county and the influence over the council affairs. So that today, or it was, only 10% of the people of Tillamook County have anything whatsoever to do with church. And that rates it as one of the least churched areas in the United States, this otherwise lovely place. So in 1997, a group of folk got together, the spiritual surveyors we'll call them, and they started to develop a spiritual map to overlay across their county. And so they could find out what is the actual spiritual DNA of the area. They conducted lots of interviews. They researched in local libraries and museums. They read minutes in town meetings, spoke with the police, the school teachers, the farmers, the students. And what they found was, well, naturally, in this area, there were the First Nations people, the community there. And of course, these people had introduced what we would call, from a Christian perspective, immorality, bloodshed, idolatry, and broken covenants into that territory. And of course, they were later overrun by the immigrants, the Europeans, and they continued those practices, except these days we don't call them that, the idolatry